I believe in a congressional testimony that was given by the Director of National Intelligence in the U.S., that's Tulsi Gabbard. She has said, and I quote, that Pakistan is amongst the biggest nuclear threats to the United States. She has reportedly said this in a congressional hearing. Tulsi Gabbard, of course, has had her own differences with the U.S. President and his military team as far as the Iran war is concerned. But this statement that Pakistan, not Iran, is among the biggest nuclear threats to the United States of America. It is a huge statement, not least because it's coming from the person who is in charge of national intelligence in the United States, Tulsi Gabbard. Let's listen in to what she said and try and make sense of whether this was in connection with the Iran war and all of this back and forth that's been going on between the intel folks and the Trump administration as to whether there was an imminent threat from Iran that warranted this kind of a war. Let's listen in to what Ms. Gabbard had to say.
Iran and Pakistan have been researching and developing an array of novel, advanced or traditional missile delivery systems with nuclear and conventional payloads that put our homeland within range. However, the intelligence community assesses that Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and Pakistan have been researching and developing an array of novel, advanced or traditional missile delivery systems with nuclear and conventional payloads that put our homeland within range. The United States' secure nuclear deterrent continues to ensure safety in the homeland against strategic threats. However, the intelligence community assesses that Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and Pakistan have been researching and developing an array of novel, advanced or traditional missile delivery systems with nuclear and conventional payloads that put our homeland within range. The IC assesses that threats to the homeland will expand collectively to more than 16,000 missiles by 2035, from the current assessed figure of more than 3,000 missiles.
A shocking escalation in the war. A nuclear power plant has now been hit. Iran's Bushehr nuclear power plant, the country's only operational reactor, has come under direct strike, triggering global alarm. According to Russian nuclear agency Rosatom, a projectile struck near the reactor zone, inside the plant's metrology service area. This is the closest a strike has come to an active nuclear unit in this conflict. So far, there are no reports of casualties, and no radiation leak has been detected. But experts warn the margin for error is dangerously thin. Nearly 480 Russian specialists remain on site at Bushehr, working inside a now high-risk zone. Emergency evacuation plans are already being activated. Russia has strongly condemned the strike, warning of catastrophic consequences if nuclear infrastructure becomes a target. Calls for immediate de-escalation are growing louder. The International Atomic Energy Agency has also stepped in. Director General Rafael Grossi has urged maximum restraint to avoid a nuclear disaster scenario. Bushehr is not just any facility. It is Iran's only civilian nuclear power plant, built with Russian support and critical to the country's energy grid. While no country has officially claimed responsibility, the strike fits a broader pattern of attacks on Iran's nuclear infrastructure. A dangerous new line may now have been crossed. Radiation levels remain stable for now, but even a small miscalculation could trigger consequences far beyond the battlefield. A nuclear plant under fire, foreign experts trapped inside. This is no longer just a regional war. It is a crisis with global consequences, where one mistake could change everything.
We strongly condemn the irresponsible and completely unacceptable missile attack launched against the inner perimeter of the Bushehr nuclear power plant, just meters from an operating energy unit. We have repeatedly warned Israel and the United States, which continue their aggressive military campaign against the Islamic Republic of Iran, of the categorical unacceptability of threatening the lives and health of the numerous Russian citizens remaining at the site who are part of the nuclear power plant's workforce. Tel Aviv and Washington must refrain from reckless attacks on nuclear infrastructure facilities, which pose a real risk of a radiological and environmental catastrophe throughout the region. We expect an unequivocal condemnation of this outrageous incident from the IAEA, which maintains safeguards at the Bushehr nuclear power plant. We expect an appropriate response from all responsible and reasonable members of the international community, and especially from the Gulf states, which stand to suffer the most. We call on the parties involved in the conflict to come to their senses and make efforts to achieve a swift ceasefire and de-escalate tensions. Continuation of hostilities is fraught with unprecedented negative consequences for the entire Middle East, including in the nuclear sphere, as we have repeatedly warned.
The US-Israel war on Iran is in its third week and is growing intense with every passing day. In the latest, energy facilities across Gulf's Arab monarchies are evacuating personnel. This as Iran's military warns it will target energy infrastructure across the region, following a US-Israeli attack on its facilities at a major gas field. Some of the infrastructure at Iran's largest gas field, the South Pars field, has reportedly been damaged following the US-Israeli strikes. According to Iranian media, US and Israeli airstrikes hit the country's South Pars gas field and nearby infrastructure. Iranian media added that oil and petrochemical facilities nearby Asaluye were also attacked. The South Pars gas field is the world's largest natural gas reservoir. It is shared between Iran and Qatar. Iran uses it for domestic energy needs, while Qatar, where it is known as the North Field, uses it to be a top global exporter of liquefied natural gas. Iranian media reports say that staff from their facilities have evacuated to safe areas and firefighting efforts remain underway at the gas field. No casualties have been reported. Qatar has strongly condemned Israel's strike on Iran's South Pars gas field, calling it dangerous and irresponsible. While the US and Israel had previously focused on targeting Iran's nuclear and missile facilities, they now appear to be expanding attacks to Iran's industrial infrastructure. In response, Iran's Revolutionary Guards have issued evacuation warnings for several energy facilities across the Gulf. The IRGC has named sites in Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Qatar, warning of possible attacks. The Saudi Defense Ministry says its air defenses are already dealing with ballistic threats in Riyadh after two loud explosions were heard above the Saudi capital. Earlier, the Iranian military's operational command, Khatam al-Anbiya, issued a statement saying that it will severely strike the source of the aggression. According to reports, it is aiming to target the fuel, energy and gas infrastructure of countries from which attacks on Iran have been launched.
President Donald Trump has a new threat to Iran: stop attacking energy targets or face a major backlash. That follows an Iranian attack on Qatar and an Israeli attack on Iranian gas facilities. Now, Doug Lazater has more from Washington, D.C. on this.
World energy markets are already roiled, and President Trump wants the attacks on energy facilities on all sides to stop. Massive flames caught on camera in Iran, what appears to be a major Israeli attack on the country's South Pars gas field. After Iran retaliated against Qatar, President Trump had enough, writing on Truth Social that if the attacks continue, the United States of America will massively blow up the entirety of the South Pars gas field at an amount of strength and power that Iran has never seen or witnessed before.
The United States is engaging in massive military coercion by saying, look, we can take out your energy, Iran. We don't want to do that because we do want to leave your country intact.
During an often contentious hearing on Capitol Hill, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard said Iran's regime is still in control.
The IC assesses the regime in Iran appears to be intact but largely degraded due to attacks on its leadership and military capabilities.
And the impact here at home is clear, with gas prices rising each day. Vice President J.D. Vance in Michigan saying the spike is temporary.
We're working on a number of things. In fact, a couple of things that I think will be announced in just the next 24 to 48 hours. I don't want to get ahead of the president on that.
And we expect the vice president, along with Energy Secretary Chris Wright, to meet with oil executives today here in the nation's capital. In Washington, I'm Doug Lusader, Fox News.
And let's take a closer look at gas prices this morning. According to AAA, the average national cost for a gallon of gas is $3.88. That's 28 cents more than 1 week ago. In our state, the average cost for a gallon is $5.15. That's an increase of 41 cents since last week.
More than 2,000 more Marines have just set sail from San Diego, likely headed to the Middle East. That's in addition to the 2,000 expected to arrive there next week. Let's bring in senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez, ABC and White House correspondent Karen Travers for more. Louis, what's the latest on this new deployment of more than 2,000 Marines?
Diane, this is the USS Boxer Amphibious Ready Group that left from San Diego earlier this week. They are currently on a previously scheduled deployment to the Indo-Pacific Command, which is essentially Asia. But we understand from officials that they are likely going to be rerouted to head towards the Middle East to join an additional Marine Expeditionary Unit, which was just diverted from Asia last week and is scheduled to arrive in the Middle East sometime early next week. So now you have what's called the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit from Asia headed there now, and likely seeing the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit from San Diego headed to the Middle East in the near future. This is a land component. It's ground forces. They're aboard 3 U.S. Navy ships that could have amphibious capability. That means they can go from sea to shore, which means beach landings. They also carry F-35s. They also have Harrier jets, depending on which unit, and you also have MV-22 Ospreys and some attack helicopters. So you have aviation capability, you have land, sea-to-land capability, and you have a ground force. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean that something is in the offing very shortly for what's happening now in Iran? There's been a lot of speculation about Karg Island, that very strategic island about 15 miles south of the mainland of Iran, and whether the United States will want to take possession of that area. But again, all speculation. But when you're seeing these two forces now moving towards the head of the Middle East, what you're seeing now is a lot more of options that would be available to military commanders should the need arise for some kind of ground capability. But no indication right now that that is a reality. In fact, what we heard from President Trump yesterday was more indications that he has not made a decision, and as of now, he's not leaning towards the use of ground troops.
And Karen, President Trump is calling Americans' NATO allies cowards for refusing to help him reopen the Strait of Hormuz. What else are you hearing about what he wants them to do?
Yeah, Diane, this is the ongoing pressure campaign from the president that we've heard over the last week, where he is pushing NATO allies to get involved in an effort to reopen the strait, but at the same time saying that this help is not needed. And now in this new social media post, the president is calling these countries cowards and saying that he will remember this. He says that this would be easy for European allies to do with, quote, so little risk. Louis was talking there about some of the options. One option we know that the president was presented with was using U.S. military assets to reopen the strait, but he has been trying to get other countries to get involved in this. Now, we have heard from numerous European leaders who say this is not NATO's war to fight, and that the administration did not build a coalition in advance. They didn't come to them ahead of these strikes starting to say this could be a potential issue. How do we figure this out? So there's been some significant pushback on that. We did hear from French President Macron last night, who said that France and other nations would assist in a ship escort system in the Strait, but they wouldn't participate in what they said was a forced opening of the Strait in the context of ongoing military operations. So essentially, they want to see this die down before they take part in anything that would have significant risk to their own military assets.
Welcome back. Let's get you some breaking inputs that have just come in, where Iran has fired 8 more salvos of ballistic missiles at Israel from midnight till early Friday evening, at least 2 of which appear to carry some cluster warheads, damaging homes and also lightly wounding some residents, as Israel has named several Iranian officials that it has killed in recent days. The fragments from one of the intercepted Iranian missiles apparently impacted near Jerusalem's Old City, causing some damage to a parking lot in the Jewish quarter, around 400 meters from the Wailing Wall and the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound on the Temple Mount. However, no injuries have been reported. And these are the images from Jerusalem's Old City. Emergency services can be seen working on the scene of the impact in Jerusalem's Old City following the missile that apparently fell from the sky. And Israeli Foreign Ministry has accused Iran of an attack on the holy sites after an impact near the walls of the Old City following the missile warning. The Israeli Foreign Ministry has written on X, and I quote, "The Iranian attack on the holy sites sacred to all 3 religions reveals the madness of the Iranian regime, which claims to be religious. Now, it has called it an Iranian gift for the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr. However, it is unclear at this moment about whether the impact was from an Iranian missile or whether it was an Israeli missile that created that impact." So this is the latest bit of information that in fact is coming in, where Iran has fired 8 more salvos of its missiles, with the Americans and the Israelis claim that they are taking out one by one. But despite of that, the Iranians have been repeatedly firing their missiles. Now, this is an interesting visual that the Israelis have now put out, claiming that this is an impact from a fragment of an Iranian missile. But it is, remember, not clear whether it is an Iranian missile fragment or whether it is an interceptor missile by the Israelis that's actually caused this impact. You can look at that moment that the missile fragment or the actual missile comes and strikes the ground inside what appears to be the compound of the old walled city. This is a site that is holy to all 3 religions of the Abrahamic faith, and it now remains to be seen as to what really is the plan here.
The war that America and Israel launched on Iran is just about ready to end its 3rd week, and it shows no signs of slowing down, and in fact, it's intensifying. We're seeing continued attacks on energy infrastructure across the Gulf Arab states. Today we saw an oil refinery in Kuwait get hit repeatedly by drones. Meanwhile, we're continuing to hear more threats from Iran itself. The top military spokesman there went out and issued a statement warning that Iran's enemies would not be safe on beaches or recreational areas anywhere around the world. This is a threat that analysts had been warning about, that Iran could return to using militant attacks abroad in areas anywhere in the world to try to advance its goals in coming out on top in this war. We also heard from a Revolutionary Guard spokesman. He tried to counter what Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said about Iran no longer being able to build the ballistic missiles it's using to target Israel and the wider Middle East. But that spokesman was later killed in a morning airstrike, showing just how Israel is continuing to target top officials within Iran's theocracy, trying to weaken it, trying to weaken those also who are in forces that suppress nationwide protests. Back in January, we heard another statement from the Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, today, but again, he did not appear in a photograph or a video continuing to raise speculation about his condition after the Israelis and the Americans have said he likely has been wounded in this war.
You are watching live now. I'm Austin Westfall. We have been tracking the Middle East closely, and we were about to go to our overnight playlist, but we just got some breaking news in from President Trump. He just sent this out on Truth Social, saying if Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. That's all it says. Thank you for your attention to this matter, the president wraps by saying. So again, the president apparently putting a 2-day deadline on Iran to fully open one of the world's biggest choke points for the global supply chain. The president just sent this out moments ago on Truth Social. We have been tracking updates all day today. We also learned that the Trump administration is going to be lifting sanctions on Iranian oil stranded at the sea under a 1-month license. The president announcing that effort in a deal to ease some of the energy concerns and energy market frustrations. A lot of people facing some of that pain at the pump. The president ultimately giving Iran this 2-day deadline, no doubt, because he wants to see the strait flow so that the world's oil and supply systems can return to a more normal state. Gas prices here at home have been one of the biggest uphill battles relating to the war in the Middle East. A live look at the White House approaching 8 p.m. in the nation's capital. Live look at Tel Aviv, where it's approaching 2 a.m. It's the overnight hours there in the Middle East. So it appears, according to this 48-hour deadline, that it's going to be the early morning hours of Monday in the Middle East is when this deadline is going to hit. So again, I'll just read it. If Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the USA will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Trump says. We here at Live Now wanted to make sure we got that breaking story on air before we wrap up for the night. It is time for us to head to the overnight playlist. It's going to be starting in a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Escalating threats between Iran and the United States are raising fears of an even wider war in the Middle East. Tehran says any attack on its power plants will trigger immediate retaliation, including the full closure of the Strait of Hormuz, strikes on energy facilities and U.S.-linked interests across the region.
In reiteration of our previous warning, if any fuel or energy facilities in Iran are targeted, we will respond by targeting energy and technology institutions and desalination plants linked to America and the Zionist entity in the region.
It comes after President Donald Trump warned that he would destroy Iran's energy facilities if it does not open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours. The waterway is a critical choke point for ships transporting oil and gas out of the Gulf. Well, we are live in Tehran, in Washington, D.C., in Ramallah, Tyre, that's in southern Lebanon, and in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, also in the Iranian capital. And that's where we start in Tehran with Ali Hashem. So, Ali, we now have this standoff. The U.S. president telling Iranians, you have 48 hours to open the Strait of Hormuz, or I will blow up your power plants, starting with the biggest and most important one. Iran has responded, and it seems that they have no intention of doing what the U.S. president is asking of them. Can you walk us through the response that you have seen from Iran over the last few hours?
Well, Cyril, in the middle of this war, it seems that another war is going on, which is the war of rhetorics and narratives. And with President Trump raising the stake, the Iranians are responding with more confrontational rhetoric. And it's clear now that there is a unified position here, because we're hearing, after we heard from the armed forces, we heard from the Speaker of the Parliament, and now the Vice President, they're all on the same point. the moment the power plants in Iran are going to be hit, the whole region will go for a blackout. And more than that, the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed, and it won't be open except these plants were rebuilt according to the armed forces. Now, with respect to the other authorities here in the country, like the vice president, he tried to defend Iran's position, saying that this is self-defense and that Iran is under the aggression, and that's why it will be self-defending itself by launching attacks against regional power plants and, of course, Israel. So this is the picture in general with respect to this point precisely. But what's clear here is that this whole conflict is going towards a dead end. There's no possibility for the moment to get down the ladder, at least from what we're hearing from both sides. Each side is taking, or at least is escalating, their own rhetoric, and this could lead to what's really worse than the situation we are in currently.
And Ali, something that perhaps is noteworthy that happened today. We heard from the Iranian representative at the International Maritime Organization. His message was actually the Strait of Hormuz is not completely closed, and if foreign countries collaborate or work with us, we can get some of those ships through the strait.
Well, Cyril, this has been the case from the beginning. They've been talking to people, to companies, and there is a kind of a procedure that they are imposing, and they are saying clearly that only ships related to the United States and Israel and their allies aren't allowed to pass there. There were several conditions put on the table, but clearly the Iranians want to impose, at least to experience this leverage they have. They want to make use of it, exploit it, in order to create a new status quo, not only today in the middle of the war. We heard several Iranian officials, including the foreign minister, saying that post-war reality should be Iran should have its leverage still to allow people to get in and out of the Gulf.
Ali Hasham reporting from the Iranian capital, Tehran. Thank you very much, Ali.